yourself. Like, we'll kind of cut this stuff out, but obviously this is the first time we're meeting. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so I don't know if you know anything about me, just to know who you're talking to. So I am a certified mental coach, which means I work closely actually with youth athletes, and I teach them, I guess, quote unquote, mental skills on how to perform to their potential. And it's a variety of kids that I work with, all different sports. It could just be to maximize potential and reach their goal, or it could be something more pressing, like having some sort of anxiety, pre-performance anxiety, or difficulties getting over mistakes. But I work with a large population of soccer players because I played soccer. I played at Princeton University, and I grew up on Long Island playing very competitive level as a youth. And then after college, I played semi-pro for a little while I was studying sports psychology. And then I kind of moved into coaching while I was doing this. So I do both. Like, so my life really consists of soccer, coaching, counseling, or consulting, whatever you call this. And then I still play just for fun. All right. So that's kind of a little background about myself. I was thinking do you want to introduce yourself, or do you want me to highlight some?
I can introduce myself. Yeah.
Okay, and then maybe they can kind of clip it. So I gave you that information. Why don't you just start with that, like all the details,
like my name, like my team, and then like my future goals, right?
Yeah, just kind of those main bullet points.
Okay. All right. So, hi, I'm Aubrey McLin, and I'm 14, and I'm a goalkeeper for the Davis Legacy 08 ECNL team, and I'm also on my region's ODP and PDP team, and I play for my region. My future goals is to become a coach and player professionally, and I also want to travel around the world.
Nice. All right, welcome, Aubrey. So for today's show, I just wanted to provide brief background for the listeners. Recently, you wrote a really beautiful piece for Girls Soccer Network, sharing your story about the loss of a good friend and teammate to suicide at the age of 13. And this was followed by another suicide of your role model, Katie Meyer, at Stanford University. In your article, you bravely state that there is a critical need for mental skills training alongside the physical, technical, tactical parts of the game, not only for soccer players, but for all people who dedicate their time to a competitive performance environment. So, Aubrey, what you have experienced recently is very emotional. So I first want to express my condolences and thank you for speaking up to help change how people view the topic of mental health. Right? With May being Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. And I would like to start by addressing one of the big questions you pose, which I will quote: why aren't we teaching athletes about how to manage stress or the pressure they may feel or experience in games, school, and in life? So I couldn't agree with you more. And I kind of just wanted to open up with maybe your take. You know, have you thought of an answer to that question? And like, what do you believe is preventing coaches and organizations from putting more time and energy into mental skills training?
There are many factors, but I think some of them are the lack of knowledge that coaches get, and then the perceived time they have because you'll be preparing for a big game for the weekend, and then also their personal coaching habits as a coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on, right? I think,
Yeah.
you know, the obvious answer is time, money, and knowledge. I think if we talk about mental skills, coaches might feel like they need a strong education in how to handle that. But what are we really talking about when we say mental skills? I mean, I can answer this, but I'm curious, like, how can you define what a mental skill is, or what are we looking for coaches to actually teach us?
I think that what we're looking for from coaches to teach us is teaching us like confidence and self-worth and like how to cope with like the stress and the pressure of the game and just like
Yeah.
general life in school.
Yeah. So how to manage all of that.
Yeah, how to manage like daily life and like doing school and soccer and all just a week. Like you might have a big game and then the next day you might have like a big test or presentation at school. So just handling and like how to like keep that organized like
Mhm.
that.
Okay. So basically we're asking them just to consider what else is going on
Yeah.
in the players' lives as opposed to, okay, show up to training and let's just get to work on the field and then go home. Right. And I think it's a fair enough statement. I mean, how many hours do you think you play soccer a week?
Quite a bit. Not gonna lie. Quite a bit.
Okay.
Like we do club training Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I do extra like training throughout the week. So I definitely think quite a bit of hours. And then we have games during the weekend. So I think definitely quite a bit of hours compared to how much time like even if you spend any time on like practicing mental health or like even just like practicing your confidence
Mhm.
compared to the hours that we spend on soccer compared to like the hours that we spend on like working on our mental skills is like a dramatic difference.
Yeah, no, and I think the point I wanted to make to maybe coaches listening is that if you're going to ask your players to dedicate that much time to the game, I mean, you have an opportunity there to focus or address, at least address and acknowledge some of the mental components of the game. And I want to add, like maybe a more scientific answer to what mental skills are. If I can boil it down to something like basic and simple. I mean, it's big, but we're saying, teach me how to gain control over my, I guess, internal state, my body, my machine, right? We're
Yeah.
kind of like in this age of computers, and, we can look at ourselves that way if we want to, but teach me how to operate my brain in an effective way, which, what's a large part of the function of your brain? Managing emotions. And I think that's maybe a really scary, difficult topic for coaches to address. And I think I kind of want to get into that a little bit. Like, where have you learned anything about emotional management? Is there any area in your life that addresses how to acknowledge and cope with emotions?
Yeah, actually one time my coach actually took us into the clubhouse, our clubhouse, and he took me and my whole team into the clubhouse and we actually talked about like what was our biggest fear. And this
Yep.
was like a week before I lost my friend.
Mhm.
And um we talked about like what was our biggest fears. And one of my biggest fears was losing someone I loved, which was it's a huge thing to me, like losing a loved one. But I think that that was one of like our biggest moments as a team, like opening up to each other and like actually talking about our feelings.
And what you're saying, and is kind of simple for a coach to say, all he did was bring you together and ask a question,
Yeah.
right? You guys were the ones that kind of showed the vulnerability and put yourself out there and expressed how you were feeling. All he had to do was facilitate that. And as a coach myself, that is a method I've been working on. Is, okay, we can stay even on the soccer field, but what if we just, instead of pulling all the players together and kind of lecturing to them, and maybe open up with a more Socratic type questioning, like, hey, what were you feeling in that moment? Even just to talk about the game of soccer, but let's start to kind of tackle that stigma against being able
Yeah.
to communicate about emotions. And I think one of the questions I wanted to ask you was like, how do you feel that maybe negative emotions like disappointment, frustration, sadness, hurt, like how could those emotions help people and athletes?
I think just really experiencing and feeling like disappointment and sadness and like that can help us learn and grow and experience it. I think just really learn like just experiencing it will help.
And I'm going to kind of talk about what you're saying in a scientific way.
Mhm.
Experiencing like I guess it's two things. Is like the emotions are energy and motion. That's an easy way to remember it. So we have this energy that all of a sudden gets triggered and flows through our body, and that we can label that energy as like disappointment, hurt, sad, regret, whatever it may be. It could be happy, positive ones as well. And the reason why we label it is to give us some information. So if I feel disappointed, then I know that maybe I underperform, like I didn't do what I know I'm capable of, or I'm frustrated and I'm not getting what I want, or I'm experiencing sadness,
Yeah.
because something tragic happened. I lost my friend. Now, these emotions, I think they're triggered no matter what, but then there's the act of acknowledging them and allowing your body to experience them. So I'm curious if you have friends or just your broad take. What stops people from wanting to experience that? Because that's, I think, the problem, right?
Yeah, I think the fear of showing weakness and being vulnerable and standing out is different. Like we see top athletes say,
Mhm.
we're perfect, we're made of steel. But recently, like we've seen like different athletes like Simone Biles and Michael Phelps, like
Mhm.
actually like show their vulnerability and say like, I'm not okay, which it's okay not to be okay. So they've shown us a different take of that. Like not all athletes are like perfect and okay.
Yeah, and I want to add too is that because we just talked about negative emotions having value, but what about this concept? Like, do you think we could experience confidence, pride, happiness, satisfaction, joy? Would we even be able to experience that if the opposite didn't exist? You follow me? So, like,
Yeah.
do I even know what happiness is if I didn't know what sadness was?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's actually a concept that um it's actually a basic like Newton's law, like you cannot have high without low. You can't, for every action there's an opposite and equal reaction. But our athletes, or maybe that you know presentation of I'm strong, I'm iron, I don't experience negative emotions, I don't experience anything in that lower end of the spectrum. But that is absolutely and honestly untrue. And so you gave great examples of professionals who, it got to a certain point where they really had to slow it down. But what if we started training athletes to just experience the normal highs and lows that have to be there, right? Like they are built into the sport and they're built into life, of course.
Yeah.
But, what do you think it is about sports that, make this a little bit harder?
I think just seeing with sports, just like how I feel like the way that like you don't feel like the lows, like if people have their highs and lows, like I think just like that, especially you have different people like commenting, like especially when you get to that pro level, like you have people watching, like when like if you do like a bad play, say in soccer, like you could have like fly tackle the person or you could have like made that save. I think that there will always be like someone like commenting in that like in that sense.
Yeah, not only so it could be like fans or observers, it could be your coach,
Yeah.
not everyone has a positive coach, and you can have that yelling. It could be parents on the sideline. It could be your own internal voice
Yeah.
that has an expectation that, hey, this matters. And so I'm seeing like that's the big difference with sports and maybe other things. But even school, it could be like, wow, this really, really matters to me. And if I feel disappointed, I feel like I'm failing. Like it's a sign that, I am not capable of doing this. Whereas in reality, it's really just a sign that, oh, something's off a little bit. Like we have something to learn, like you had said, there's something to learn here. And unfortunately, going back to the whole public image, we haven't really given a place for ourselves to, as performers, to experience those emotions and express them, express that level of vulnerability. And I do want to make one more point about like self-trust, right? Like how does trust get developed? Like if you have a friend, right? Like how do you start to build trust with a friend?
I think being open with each other is a really huge part of like trusting someone. Like you have to be open with that person that you trust, and like definitely as a team, you can't like shy away from them. Like you have to be open sometimes, and like I think there are teams and like there are times where teams do struggle with being open with some like everyone, because it's definitely hard to like open up to everyone. But I think that's just like the thing that step you have to take to really like become like friends or like trust someone.
Good. And I love what you said. And that's what my clientele say. I work with youth athletes, every week, every day. And it's the same thing. Is like, if I'm going to trust someone, there needs to be that openness, that vulnerability. And then I ask you to look at yourself in that same way. Right.
Yeah.
So we really want to inspire this development of mental strength. There doesn't have to be something wrong to bring mental health into the picture, right? And you wrote about this as well. We're talking about mental wellness, just the ability to manage my own emotions and operate my brain and my body to its maximum potential, right? So in order to do that, in order to perform in a game like soccer where you've got to make decisions, you have to trust yourself. Right. So in order to trust yourself, you've got to be open with yourself and honest. And I think that comes with acknowledging your emotions, having some sort of strategies on how to manage those emotions. And then I kind of want to move into beliefs and expectations. So I know you're a busy girl, right? You do a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you this question of like, do you ever feel like you have to do all those things and you have to do them well?
I definitely do feel like at times that like I do have to do everything. Like I'm a 14-year-old girl, and like that adds and like I'm a competitive goalkeeper, so that adds like a whole nother layer to it. But I think it's just really being open with the ones that you trust and you love. So I'm always open with my parents. I am open and with my coach too, and like my teachers and like I just and my trainers, and like you have to be honest with yourself sometimes. Like I might need an adjustment in my schedule. Like I might need to take a day off sometimes. Like there's like professional, like recently professionals have like been doing it too. Like Kristen Press took a season off. Simone Biles like took a break from the Olympics. It's just like sometimes you have to be honest with yourself, not just honest with other people. You have to be honest with yourself and the people you love. Like sometimes you might need that break.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what you're doing is advocating for yourself first, right? Before we start advocating for other people. And you're young too, but even I'm just thinking like coaches and stuff, coaches maybe need to demonstrate this, like advocate for yourself. What works, what doesn't work, what's a healthy boundary, right? And that comes with knowing yourself first and connecting, and you're really stressing this importance of being open. And I couldn't agree more. And I'm going to bring in some thoughts, for the listeners. I think it's important to acknowledge everybody has a critical voice in their minds. I mean, it's just kind of how we're born and developed. It's built in. I think we just need to listen a little bit and say maybe create some separation between that voice and what's going on, like the reality, right? So if I'm having the belief, and I want to say this plainly because this is what I hear across the board, is I have to play my best all the time, or you get that sensation like, oh, I made a mistake, I'm feeling pressure, I'm feeling stress, or oh, I almost don't want the ball because I'm afraid of making the mistake or getting yelled at. I mean, that stems from a belief that I have to play my best all the time, which I know from my practice stems from this belief that my self-worth, who I am as a person, is dependent upon my performance. And I'm just wondering what you hear, like when I say this, and if you have any insight on that belief, maybe to help other people, because I know a lot of people feel that way, that their own self-worth, their identity is completely dependent upon their performance, whether it be soccer, school, any other sport or performance environment.
I think I definitely struggle with my own self-worth at times and my confidence. Like after a bad play, I'm like in my head sometimes, but like there was a quote that I heard from Ted Lasso. It's the
That's so funny. I started watching it. I was
yeah, it was a pretty good show, and like I heard this quote, and it was like it was Ted Lasso talking to the goalkeeper, and I was like, oh wow, goalkeeper, like perfect. And it was like, you need to have a 10-second, you have to be like a goldfish, you have to have a 10-second memory sometimes, and I think like that's perfect, especially for like different positions and sometimes all positions. Like you have to have a 10-second memory. If you make a mistake, it's okay, like keep playing. Like I think that I always say in my mind, after I make a good like a bad play, maybe like I might like kick the ball wrong or something, be a goldfish. Sometimes you just have to say to yourself, be a goldfish. And I think that like having a, like I call it a match script, sometimes like having something that you say in your head, or like a motto in a way, something like just say in your head after you make a bad play, or like even just in life or in school, like if you make a mistake, just like have like a match script, a life script. Like just having one of those can just like completely like help sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. And that, so you said a lot there that I love. We'll just stick with that script. It's like a mistakes routine, just some sort of routine, a refocusing strategy, whatever you want to call it. And the way that I organize my whole methodology is we all experience triggers in life, no matter what, because triggers are something outside of you, or it's a thought within your head. And that trigger causes a change in your physiological state, like your heart rate, your blood flow, your like how rapid your thoughts are, changes the state in your emotions, and it changes in your thoughts, which drives your behavior. So what you're saying and suggestion, and I agree with, is know what your triggers are, first of all, and have a plan in place so that you can manage them and stay present. So again, like this whole goldfish thing is great, because I think it's like a gift and a curse is our memory. So we have this memory of the past, and it's great. It could serve us, but it could also really hurt us if we stay attached to it, right?
Yeah.
So something happened in the past that was unpleasant, and remember, highs and lows, natural part of life. So we've had this unpleasant experience, and we're like, man, I need to, I'm carrying it with me, but we need to learn from it and move forward. And, I have a process, and it first starts with awareness, like we're talking. Then we have acceptance. So accepting what's happening, and also accepting the fact that your body's in that physiological state, but knowing that that is temporary. The moment is temporary, and the aftermath, the internal experience and the emotional experience is temporary. That's the goldfish. And then from there, once you've accepted it and you're open with yourself, like we've been discussing, then you move on to affirmation, like good, like positive thoughts, like character traits are the best. I mean, we haven't talked about this, but do you have any words that for sure describe you as a person, as an athlete? For example, like I am passionate, competitive, aware, driven.
I would say driven. Sometimes I would say like I had like a nickname for myself that was like the wall, but like
Nice.
it was a nickname, and I stick with it and I love it. And then definitely open and friendly, like, and try to, and like I don't know how to describe it, but like try to like help others be open with me. Like I try to like be as like friendly and like together.
Yeah, like cohesive. Yeah, you're supportive too. And I think open describes it the best, what you're saying, because openness within yourself, you're inviting people to be open with them, and you're probably very considerate and empathetic with them, so they feel comfortable opening up to you, right? And so what you just did there was, okay, I had a bad moment, because it happens, it's a natural part, and then I accept it, and then I remind myself of my stable identity. You're these things, and just on the spot you were able to describe yourself very nicely. And that's what we want to encourage other people to do, because I think that's where they get lost. And we're looking at some these recent tragedies and all the stress and pressure that people are experiencing, but I want I want listeners to know that emotions and negative moments are very temporary. And if we could have this mechanism to acknowledge that and help ourselves move forward, isn't that being tough too? Right. So
Yeah.
you shared a story with me, and I don't know if you're share again, or you asked a question about why is it when someone breaks their arm and they're in a cast, it's
Yeah.
like, ah! Why don't you share that with the listeners? I thought it was really.
So what I said was like, when say if I like break my arm or break my elbow, my teammates and my coach would give me so much attention. Like they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like get the trainer, get help. Like you need a heal, like help." And then when it comes to the mental aspect, when I have like someone told me, I heard someone say like a brain scratch, like a mentally like you're not okay, and it's okay not to be okay. Like why didn't like your team come together and try to help you with that? And it's they don't take it the same way.
I agree with that, right? A lot of attention and compassion and support immediately when there's a physical.
When you can actually see it.
Yes, when you can see it. That's exactly it. And also, maybe it's just more comfortable. I mean, we go back to this level of comfort. Like, I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but I mean, negative emotions are just really uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
they, I think human beings develop defense mechanisms and then they just ignore it and avoid it. Those are the biggest defense mechanisms, right? Denying something, ignoring something, and avoiding it. And so if you're witnessing a player having a moment with, a downward spiral of emotion, you ignore it. And meanwhile, it is very similar. I like the word scratch sometimes. So I describe it as like you just got pinched. Like,
Mm.
okay, it hurts, it's annoying, it's
Yeah.
unsettling, it's uncomfortable, but it's very temporary as long as you let it be. We
Mm.
don't let it be temporary at times though, because we hold on, because I said the memory stuff, we hold on to the past, or we fear the future and the repeat experience of that uncomfortable emotion. But I really strongly believe if we start integrating some mental training at a young age, and I actually work with players as young as, 8 years old, if we can just give the skills before it's like becomes more difficult and stressful, it gets hardwired into the brain system. And now they have exactly what you and I've been talking about. They're comfortable being open. They have a routine. They know they know their stable character traits. Right. And then that would be that affirmation part. And then it becomes easier to move back on the game. So that's the rest of the 5 A's is, hey, let's have an aim and take action, which is that performance stuff that, we're really addressing. And why does it stem from that? So we're talking about sport and performance. Like, what is it about competitive high level sports that, attracts people? Like, what do you gain from dedicating so much time and energy towards soccer for yourself?
I think that the reason why competitive sports and like are so big and like such a big like expectation in a
Mhm.
way that like people like are just get so involved. Like I know people that spend like let's say like 10 hours a week just doing pure soccer training when they don't spend like just 15 minutes was what I was saying to my club. Like 15 like a 15-minute like period of just like each week talking to like your team and being vulnerable, like how we were talking about like what's your biggest fear, like
Yes.
doing like that, like 15 minutes, just 15 minutes a week each like season can like just make your team be more together and like feel more open with each other and feel like more like you can talk to them. And I
Yeah.
think like just doing that, and then like I was also saying like coaches and parents be given free mental skills trainings on the mental and developmental training. So like the coaches like know what to talk about with their team, and parents like it like let their children know that you can be open with us, and like they would know how to respond or know what questions to ask. I feel like that's like really important.
Yeah, so it's really just kind of stressing, because I do think there's resources out there more so, especially I know it's new though, so I will acknowledge that. I mean, sports psychology in general is a newer field. developing, like probably picked up speed more in the 80s, so that's fairly young, right? And I think now it's getting a little more acceptance because our professionals are talking about it. But I would say what you're talking about is putting pressure on the top of the organizations and saying this absolutely needs to be mandated part of the sport, because back to what I was saying, that so many people spend so much time playing soccer. And
Mhm.
why do they do it? Well, because it's fun and it brings joy and happiness for the most part. And at some point, because of the amount of time and how young they're starting to get involved in it, like at a high, I mean, I'm seeing 8-year-olds like doing the
Yeah,
same
like
stuff.
8 and 7-year-olds,
Yeah,
like
right.
start at like the youngest like little age, just like, and I like see them come to legacy fields, and I'm like, how old are you?
Yeah,
Like,
I know. It's to me, I look at them and I'm starting to understand, because I look at them, I'm like, oh man, you guys are little ninjas. I never had that skill at that level. But maybe what's happening is they're doing so well and it's adorable, but people are treating them like adults and
yeah,
they're forgetting their cognitive development, like the age that they're at.
yeah,
And therefore it's like this big question I've always asked: at what point does somebody start to question their self-worth based on their performance? Because if you take a 5-year-old, that's not true, right? No, no, a 5-year-old's not sitting there like, am I worthy if I play well today? No,
yeah.
they're just running and kicking a ball, right? And they're enjoying themselves. So I'm wondering what changed. And I do think it's the demands
Yeah,
being put on, and that's a big issue from the top down, right? Saying, oh,
yeah,
you need to do this to be seen, to do, and you're just kind of taking people's hopes and dreams, and I don't know, almost taking advantage of that in a way. So lots of changes that need to be done, and you bring up some really good points. I want to talk a little bit more about maybe the generation. Because I'm always curious when I talk to younger, like, do you have any insight on your generation in particular? Like, and what skills outside? I want to bring in breathing skills. So I'm just curious your perspective on breathing and meditation, if people your age are drawn to it, or if you think there's a resistance there.
I mean, I started learning about like meditation and breathing at a very young age because of my medical condition, because like I needed to learn how to like control my breathing if like I was feeling more tense after like maybe some stress or after soccer. But with me in meditation, it was like kind of hard for me because I have ADHD, and like I can't like stay on a topic for too long. So that was definitely not something that I was too good at. But like I have heard like other players my age like do I've heard some like players do like confident classes. I've actually done one before with female footballers who I wish intern at now.
Nice.
Um and I've done like confident classes. I've heard like some like one other or two other teammates do it. I've heard like people from other teams do it, which I think like that's a huge step for people my age to do that now. Like, cause
Yeah.
like I bet like most of the pros at my age would not have even like thought of doing anything, and they probably didn't even have the resources to like try and do it. So
Mhm.
now I think like it's good that like girls, even like boys and anyone like playing sports at any age like starts like to like know what their resources are.
Yeah, and so I'll just bring in some of the scientific background of it. Like, why are we talking about breathing and meditation? Well, there's a
Yeah.
lot of reasons why. Going back to what is really disrupting the individual, what's causing that pressure and the stress. Well, a lot of that has to do with thoughts, right? Like this noise and this chatter within your mind. And I want people to know that your thoughts can be looked at as just another sense, right? I see, I smell, I taste, right? I touch. Well, thoughts could be considered just a sense as well. And then we find ourselves paying attention to our thoughts way too much more than all the collective. So when you do breathing and meditation, the idea is to slow down your thoughts and create space inside of your body. And I'm going to couple this with another research by Kahneman. This is like a very well-known, he's a Nobel Prize winner, about breaking down how our brain makes decisions. And I think you would understand this in soccer, and especially as a goalkeeper, like we have this one part of our brain that is like intuitive and reaction, right? Like you just know, you just do. And then we have that other side that's thinking. I'm I'm seeing that we're really caught up in the thinking side of the brain, and we don't allow enough space and room for our intuition, right?
Mhm.
So maybe questioning our decisions, questioning our mistakes in the past, worrying about the future. That's all that thinking rational brain. And so I really can't stress how valuable it is to create that space and quiet down the noise, right? Whether that's through meditation, and there are resources out there that I'll just share with everyone. There's so many apps. I couldn't even, calm heads.
Yeah, the amount of apps I've seen and like so many apps like for breathing and just meditation. Like you even go to like you can find videos online
Mhm.
too that are like free.
Yeah,
So
and so I feel like it's there, right? The resources there, and I'm wondering what prevents it. And you kind of explained this and you shared this openly. It's hard, right? It
yeah.
can be really hard to sit there and quiet the mind and not get agitated or want to move and go. It could be anything. It's not even agitation. Maybe you're just energetic and you want to go do something. And so I do think I would highly recommend players to help you manage your emotions, to help you quiet your thoughts and create space for growth, and to help you perform better, right? So that, because we know soccer, in order to perform, you want to trust yourself, you want to be intuitive.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's also that aspect of like how you guys you probably have no comparison, but social media, it's like, how do you see your friends spending their free time? Like, do you see a lot of like using the phone or going to the phone, kind of going to media? You do?
Yeah, I've definitely seen that a lot, like especially with the new uprising of like the social media like TikTok,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I think that's, I mean, like there's definitely positives to apps like TikTok, but I think there's also like you compare yourself to other people on there. Like
Mhm.
sometimes like social media apps like that, like you compare yourself to someone else, and I don't think that's healthy at all for like someone to do that. But like I definitely think they're positive. Like you can like
Mhm.
see your friends on there, you can talk to your
Yeah.
friends. But, like there's definitely like that comparison issue of like people looking at someone else like saying, I wish I was like someone like that. Like I wish I was like that. But like you actually like don't know what's like happening to them inside their head. Like
Yeah.
there's like those social media influencers and stuff like that. You don't like they probably get like so many comments like and all those hateful comments about like on social media. Like I can't like imagine like what would that do to like someone's head.
No, and I'll kind of give you again the science of it is that your heart, you're actually building that into the wiring of your brain. I mean, especially the younger you start using it. Comparison's a normal developmental I mean, that's a human thing, but
Mhm.
we are just exacerbating it by looking on social media and seeing other people, and then it's a natural process. But it is unfortunate because then you get caught in these loops. So obviously I wouldn't sit here and say don't go on social media. That's not the answer, right? This
Yeah.
is the world we live in, and like you said, there's a lot of value to it as well. I think it's about just acknowledging what's happening and being aware, like we're discussing right now. Just know, be educated and informed on when you spend your time in that environment, that digital environment, there are consequences. Just like anything, you eat bad food, there's consequences, right? And I would look at it the same thing. It's the same way. It's food in your mind, right? It's food.
Yeah.
You ever heard that phrase, like food for thought, right?
Yeah.
So it is interesting, and I think maybe this goes back to, let's bring the coaches back into this, because that's our objective today is to bring awareness to mental health, but also to really encourage the leadership to help lead, and address this part. So do you think there's a place for coaches to even educate on on social media use, or create some sort of, I don't know if it's rules or just like something around social media? Or do you want that to be your private space?
I think like coaches should advise like I mean, they shouldn't like say like you shouldn't go on social media or something, but like they should like advise like you shouldn't compare yourself to someone else. Like they should at least say something like don't compare or like something like that, because I bet like there's so many girls like my age that would do that. But I feel like just like I wouldn't say that they should like take like hand in it, like trying to like control, but
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it goes back to just acknowledge it and maybe educate, like instead of ignoring and
yeah.
avoiding, just making it all about soccer, soccer, soccer. Right. I agree. Anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay. So just some other, I think we kind of covered it. Just making sure I have everything, but any extra information on how to cope? I really want to help prevent other young athletes from, choosing suicide as like a final option. I mean, that really, obviously something is going on in the mind that got them to that point. And I do think we covered a good amount of detail. And I think if I can pull one overarching theme from this conversation is be open. And we want to get people, because there's just a wide variety of people and experiences in the world, right? And in the
Yeah.
United States, and so many people play soccer. So we want to reach out to them and say, like, is there anything we can do to help you to feel more open? I know you had a good recommendation. Do you want to share that one with coaches, like the card?
Oh yeah. So I suggested to my club, and I think like every sports program should do this, no matter what the sport is. It's like a bag tag, so it has a QR code and some mental skills resources.
Mhm.
And the QR like links give you like information on like how to handle the stress, pressure, and all that like mental skills sort of things. And then also it has hotlines that you can reach out to, and it has all this information. And we're gonna try to get it out to players before every season, like after tryouts.
Mhm.
So that they can just have those on hand, like because everyone like at my age and up like has like phones.
Yeah.
So like the bag tag type of idea, like it would just be on your legacy, it would be on our bags, and then it would just be attached to your bag, so you like always have it on hand. So like no matter if you're like on a trip or at home, anywhere, like it can always be with you.
And it's a reminder, it's a really easy reminder that there's support there, and that there are people to reach out to. So I really love that idea. Thank you for sharing. And then I want to offer maybe one from a coaching perspective, as a coach myself and a mental coach, doing both, playing both roles. I know what it's like to be on the field, and it can be difficult time wise, and you have a lot to do, but I have tried myself just to use the game and what you're naturally talented at, which is coaching, right? Use the game as an example or a metaphor for what we're doing, what we're talking about, right? And that, if I keep it concise, it's emotional management, right? So there are so many opportunities during practice where players are triggered to feel an emotion that might distract them from focusing and performing, right? Or maybe they just made a mistake and they're feeling emotion. I would just suggest simply bringing that into the performance conversation. This doesn't need to be therapy or expression, but it's just asking, like, hey, what emotion, were you feeling after that mistake, or that might have blocked you from concentrating in that situation? And it's similar to what your coach did, where now we're in an on-field environment and we're asking questions, and you don't know what the team is going to respond with. It could be great. You don't even know what direction it would go in, but we do know that it does help create a more cohesive team, and a group of players that just maybe feel safer, more trustworthy of one another, and perform better, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's the work. I do want to just put this in here. Everything we're talking about today, I know Aubrey's on a female team and I am a female myself, but this is not gender exclusive.
Yeah.
And using soccer as the context is just, it's boys and girls. everyone's kind of struggling, and they're the same generation. It's still the same pressures. So, and I would even argue that boys are less likely to open up,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
this very important for them. And just to address ages, I mean, like Aubrey and I were saying, this is happening at a young age. So I think you even mentioned like as young as 10 years old would be a good,
Yeah.
yep, a
Like
good
10 and up, pretty much.
Yep. And if we start at that 10-year-old mark, opening the conversation, like I said, I think it would be better built into the thought process, for
Yeah.
players. And it would be a normal, natural part of the game. But, thank you for talking. Is there anything else you want to say to your generation of people listening? Any final note?
No, not really.
I think you did a really good job. Thank you so much for sharing, not only your experience. I know you've gone through a lot of difficult experiences lately, and I really respect and appreciate your courage and bravery. And we do need more people like you to voice. I do think the change is going to come from your generation. Um, and my generation, hopefully, will just get those resources in your hands. Right. So there are things out there. I do have a workbook for anyone listening. It's based on developing self-esteem. And it's for the individual user, but coaches could use it within the context of the team. And that would be another excellent tool if you're uncomfortable having the conversations, at least providing them a space and time to do it on their own. So we'll kind of help you find the link for that one when we post this. And thank you for listening today. We'll remember May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and anything you can contribute to building that awareness is greatly appreciated, not just for athletes, but I think the generation as a whole.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aubrey. Thanks so much for
Thank you so much.
Oh, let me stop recording.